Radhe Radhe everyone. How are you all? Welcome to Bhagavad Gita study. I was being suggested to say some Lord's name in the beginning and end of my videos. I did not do that until now only because I did not want our Western followers, if there are any subscribers, to think that this is only about Vaishnava or Shaiva or whatever God I'm invoking in the beginning. It's not about that. It's about philosophy and journey towards divine. So that's why I wanted not to say it, but I've decided I'll take up that suggestion and always invoke Radhe, who is a symbol of bhakti and pure love towards Lord. And in Kali Yuga, I feel that Jnana Marga and Karma Marga alone will not be feasible because our lifestyle is such. Kali Yuga's best practice is bhakti, which flowers, matures, and fruits into a sweet fruit called jnana. Once you have jnana, you're also very much a bhakta. And when you're a bhakta and your bhakti matures, you're a complete jnani. This is what my guru said. This is what my guru was. I saw him to be a complete jnani and a complete bhakta at the same time. So, welcome back. I'm happy to be back. I'm going to attempt to answer a question today posted by Nomad about verse 413, which is about Varnashrama. Before I even began this, I would try my best to convey how against I am Varna practices of today. Today's Varna practice. You should know that Varnashrama Dharma, as it is practiced now in Hindu societies, is not conducive for spiritual advancement. To proclaim one particular group or groups of people by birth to be superior than somebody else is to be shunned, not to be supported in any religion or any country, anywhere. Even between animals and humans, if humans feel superior that animals are helpless, that's something that should not be encouraged. It needs to be discouraged. Any form of oppression towards other is not conducive to spiritual journey. If you consider yourself to be spiritual and you want to walk the spiritual path, you are not supposed to do that at all. Because everything external, your body, your caste, your creed, your color, your state, your country, your religion, your mom and dad, your household, your vocation, everything external to you does not help in any way to get closer to Lord. It's all about how you are internally, how your internal climate is, how much of love do you have for another as God has for his creation is what matters. So if you are on the other side of the spectrum and say, hey, you are speaking all lofty things, but I was discriminated against and I feel very bad about it, that I was being oppressed, by any means, you should question the oppression lawfully and do whatever is needed not to continue that practice, to stop that other from oppressing you lawfully. And if you are being oppressed, that's number one indicator not to continue that practice to another and not to for yourself to do it. We have all faced some sort of discrimination, disrespect in every form. We all have faced it from another. What does it indicate? It is a reminder that you don't do the same thing to another. That's That's number one indicator. And then you take care of what happens and you go to the relevant authorities. If you feel you're discriminated based on your gender, for example, you go to the company, I mean, at workplace, you go to HR, or do whatever is necessary in the channel to take care of that. But it's number one indicator that you are not supposed to do the same thing to another. The more you stop from doing that, the better it is for your spiritual advancement. I'm taking that out of the way, that I do not support any sort of oppression or discrimination based on anything, including caste, based on any external circumstances to oppress another being. I'm not even saying human. I do not support oppressing and killing animals or other species for our own benefit. We must try as much as possible not to be doing that if we want to walk the spiritual path. The next thing that I want to say is, in answering this question, I am an ineligible person. I have no spiritual authority to answer this question because I'm the lowermost rung of the lowermost lowermost learner. Like, I'm not even there where I can answer questions. I have to refer to what my guru has said or what I have written down based on some monk or somebody that has authority to answer this question. You might have an answer in various videos for this verse, but I am going to answer this based entirely on what my guru told me about this verse. Little bit about my guru. I have many gurus. Sorry, I'm drinking something. um I wanted to shoot a video very soon in the morning, so I'm drinking coffee. um I have many gurus, as I said, but there is one guru that I depended on a lot when it comes to questions like this. This guru came into my life when it was absolutely necessary. I was going through dark night of soul sort of an experience where I was completely lost. At that time, this guru appeared in my life, literally appeared in my life. He took over. He said there was no time and he has to put me in a certain path, and he gave me techniques to meditate, and he wanted me to meditate. He put me on the path of meditation. I'm ever grateful for him. In my mind, I consider him a jnani. He knew everything about everybody. Just by looking at them, he could see past births and stuff like that. He was a meditator. He was a jnani and a bhakta of Ma Kali. And he was a Gahasta, very much in family, not a monk. He was silent mostly. His tradition is really, like, tradition in the sense lineage is secretive, and I cannot reveal who he is, but he is not in the world anymore. He used to answer all these questions of mine when I went to him. Him being complete jnani, completely he just discarded the ideas, any ideas about the body and its status. Like, the body, the birth, and the status, anything that was external was completely immaterial for him. He knew everything though. So when I went to him about the same verse and said, why would God create such a thing? He answered my questions, and I'm paraphrasing those because I didn't write them down. I spoke to him often about this, and it's a compilation of many conversations, and his answers resonated with me. And I'm going to attempt to just answer from what he said and not put my own thoughts in here, only because I told you I'm ineligible in these matters to answer. The second thing I would like to address is where this question is coming from. If this question is coming from a sincere place as to why Nomad's question was Jati Vivasta. Jati means caste. Why is God talking about caste? This isn't this discriminatory? Isn't this against spirituality? Very honest question. But if it is asked in a cynical way, to discard, if you've made up your mind, I'm going to discard everything that there is in the scripture because there was a mention about Varna, then you're losing out. But if it was asked in a sincere manner that God would never do such a thing, why is this there? Then the answers would resonate more with you. I have found many that came to me and said, well, your dharma, and they already disown the dharma. Your dharma says this, or your dharma has been practicing these things, so I am never going to be subscribing to this. I'm going to follow another path. Be sure to follow another path. If you feel no resonance with a particular path to reach God, you can choose any path to reach God, and all paths would have ugly parts like this. Every path has ugly parts like this. You know why? Because it's not the path's fault, it's the human beings that interpret them, that run their life based on what they think God has said. That's where whole problem arises. They think God is in their favor and not in others' favor. That's how they feel, that's how they operate. That is not spiritual. That is not going to benefit anyone, them or those around them. It's upon you. You want to subscribe to something like that, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. You have to walk your spiritual path based on your inner guidance. Inner guidance based on prayer and devotion is always, always loving to everybody. You will not be guided to go kill, taking Lord's name. That's not right. No, I'm not talking in the army context where your job itself is on the line of duty. I'm talking about a normal person who takes violence in his own hands. That doesn't happen. That's not God's guidance. Anyway, coming back to this, when I went to my guru about this, he said something about Varna and Ashrama. God has created three major gunas, a composition or characteristics through which things shine, which things operate and human beings operate. Sattva guna is predominantly supposed to be very spiritual, very light, very sukshma, very light in the sense bright light, divine light kind of behavior. Rajasic, which is mostly, filled with a puff of ego. You just, you pump your chest and say, I am a Shaivite, or I'm a Vaishnavite, I'm a servant of Lord Ram, or, whatever. That's even good way of Rajas. But if you are proud about yourself, you're generous, but you want 10,000 people to know you're generous. Those are all Rajasic qualities. You also, or somebody who's outspoken, who would go and question people who are not fair. You will want justice and you will be very loud about it. That's all Rajasic qualities, still very good. And third is Tamasic qualities, where you consider yourself very low, and because of that it's like a feelings of inferiority complex and feelings of extreme superiority complex, both of them. And then usually it is most tamasic qualities, even though tamas is very much required in many cases. The most tamasic qualities in our inappropriate amounts do not result in good practices for spirituality. So these are the three gunas that God created for us to operate from. Choices given to us are these three. And based on these three gunas, consequently, our karmas in the sense actions, become tamasic, rajasic, or sattvic. If we think only we will just convert entirely to sattva and all our actions become sattvic, that's again an unrealistic and very discriminatory practice. Again, you're putting something in front of another. That's not how God meant it to be. We need sattva, a lot of sattva in Kali Yuga, because we are inflicting pain on other human beings and other beings. We need to stop that, for which we need more sattva. As societies, we need more sattva. I agree. But sattva alone, if it ran, then it would be Satya Yuga. It's not Kali Yuga. In Kali Yuga, we are supposed to be balancing stuff and bringing in more sattva, because sattva is generally less. So, based on the combination of gunas, there used to be certain actions that come out of it. It's a combination of guna. When you see somebody on the road struggling to cross the road and you help them cross the road, the action is sattvic and you operate it from a sattvic mode with a certain combination of rajas. You come home and say, hey, you know what? I did that. I cannot believe myself. She even said, you're so great and you should live long, son. She blessed me. That's rajasic. Wanting appreciation for a good deed. That's rajasic. So some amount of sattvic and rajasic tendencies you had that day, which created a sattvic karma with a tinge of rajas. This is how you operate. Every day you operate in based off of combination of gunas and resultant karmas. If you observe your karmas for a long time, and if you observe which guna you operated from for a very long time, then that would yield a better way to live, is what our ancient civilizations found. To organize themselves as societies of a functioning society with very good, effective relationships between each other. I'm talking about very ancient civilization where there were many good people meaning good things for themselves and others. These souls did not want to discriminate or oppress. These souls wanted good for everybody. So those ancient civilizations thought this varna and ashrama can be put in place to organize themselves as societies and working groups. Just like a company is being formed, there are a group of clerks, there are a group of managers, there are a group of VPs, and then there is one guy who's CEO. Nothing discriminatory about that. They put their use of experience and skills to run this company as a whole. Without the clerk, the VP can't survive. Without the VP's guidance, the clerk cannot work. It does not have anything high or low. It's based on their skills and their experience and how they contribute. Of course, the salaries are different, but the clerk is still allowed to move up. He can do what is necessary to move up to the VP grade. He has the options and choices. This is how the Varna was created initially by God, to guide ourselves to see what guna and what karma we have been consistently doing. Ancient civilizations thought if we notice ourselves always going and protecting people against bullying, we are very brave, that we want to go question unjust practices. We are always very quick to react with anger for good causes. You are a Kshatriya. And if you're physically not that strong, but you have good memory and you are able to sit for hours in meditation, generally inclined to know about Parabrahman, I also want the welfare of the society. And I'm willing to pray and do rituals, sitting there not eating and not going towards money or embracing poverty for the sake of others. Then they were Brahmanas doing that. Then there are these people with numbers, very good numbers, and they knew about wealth and how the wealth need to flow and stuff. They were very good in selling and buying, and they were Vaishyas. And then there were people who wanted to serve others. They were very good at serving and knowing the needs of others. They don't have to be told twice what is required for this other person. Very important work. They also said that, okay, I will serve others. This will be my path. Because I'm constantly able to follow but not lead. I'm a very good person when it comes to instructions. I'm exactly able to follow them. A tamas equality, which is needed. Because when you're a child, you start to question everything and you don't learn anything. You need Thomas, where you will say, okay, whatever you say, I'll listen. Sometimes you need that. So that kind of quality I have, I'm going to put it to best use for my own dissolution of past karmas and go walking towards Lord. This is how Varna and Ashramas were created. Ashramas, the four ashrama, they combine Varna and Ashrama to live their life. Four ashramas is Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. They, in the first youth of your life, you are learning. You're learning what is right from wrong, and you're given practices to walk in the path of right, and you're practicing them. That's your youth, your brahmacharya. You're following the path of dharma. Number two is grahastha. When you get married, you're serving your family. It becomes very difficult at this point. Grahastha is the most difficult form, ashrama, where you are trying to do the right thing, trying to be fair to everybody, and it's family, it's different people, different temperaments, trying to balance everyone, doing maximum of good things, trying to act from sattva mostly. Then comes vanaprastha, where your duties are over, you are just there because you have extreme experience in life and people come to you for advice. Your duties are over, which means you're not running about for money or anything. So you spend a majority of your time in contemplation of God, and just surrendered yourself to God. And whenever your advice and your solid presence is needed, and you're giving stability that comes out of practice and experience, and your devotion and surrender to Lord, you're giving it to your family. You know, that grandma and grandpa who tell stories to your grandchildren to put them in the good path, and those things have gone, by the way. There is no, I don't see. Very sad to say that many grandmas and grandpas right now are not sharing stories from the past or from their life or even scriptures to children. That's very much needed for a healthy environment to grow in. That's my opinion. That's a different thing. So that's vanaprastha. And then comes sannyasa, where you're completely let go of your family. You're living in isolation. You're contemplating just God and preparing to leave your body in the presence of God and move over to your next experience or next janma with reduced burden of karma. Bad karmas, you're trying to fully dissolve them and getting ready for your next adventure. This four types or stages of life combined with this varna that God had created based on guna and karma, resultant karma, was used in ancient civilizations to run their society. Slowly, what happened is that system became corrupted. Instead of guna and karma, if God had based this based on birth, he would have said, I have created four varnas based on birth. He didn't say that. The verse says, I created four, the societal classifications based on guna and karma. Guna is characteristic. Based on that characteristic, whatever karma was resulting in, that's what this is based on. So you need to make sure that you understand this, that God created these as a guideline for you to check yourself whether you are on the right path, which relates to your goal. If your goal is to go on a spiritual path and reach God, and you're constantly operating from the place of tamas, there is a problem. You might have to look at your ways, change them. So you also need to see whether suitable actions are taking place based on gunas. For example, you will use these gunas involuntarily. You may not be aware of this. Your actions come out of these gunas anyway. But sometimes they're borderline transitions that create problems. For example, if you have a child that does not behave, you want to discipline this child. You'll mostly actually come from sattva, and a little bit of rajas where threatening the kid of the consequences. Threatening the kid of consequences, or threatening that you may even smack them, is rajasic. It's needed. But mostly it is guided by sattva. You want this kid to behave. Imagine your tamas took over. You start beating this kid black and blue. Is that appropriate guna and action for this scenario? Absolutely not. So these gunas and the action that result out of them have created these four varnas, but you have to check what you're operating from. You will operate from all these four aspects in your everyday life. You will be a Brahmana when you are praying in the morning, meditating, communing with God. That's a Brahmana action with the Brahmana quality with the Sattvic predominance. And then you will go stand in line in DMV or anywhere. Somebody will cut the line and you'll get mad. It's not fair that somebody cuts your line. You will question them. You will raise your voice. That's a chatric action. You will be a kshatriya there. You come back home, you see your mother, she's bedridden, you will serve her. How will you serve her? How will you feed her? How will you give her water? With extreme tamas, full humility. Full humility. There is no room for rajasa, because you cannot say, I'll just throw a piece of bread in this poor woman's mouth. That is generosity, that is compassion too, but that's rajasic compassion. That's not what you practice. Here, tamas is needed. You know why? Because serving your mother will reduce your karmas, your bad karmas. Serving your mother has to be done with extreme humility, saying that the mother is higher than me. She is my God. I'm surrendered to her. With the feelings of complete humility, you will serve as a Shudra to your mother, ill mother. So all these four things every day you do. You go haggle, you go bargain with the shopkeeper. That's a Vaishya quality. You do that. All these things you do. Whether these are appropriate at the appropriate circumstances. You cannot be rajasic where tamas is required. You cannot be a brahmana where kshatriya is required. That's exactly what the point of Gita is. You cannot be a brahmana where a shudra is required. You cannot say, I'll go do penance so my mother gets better. That there you have to be a shudra. You have to start serving your mother. That is your spirituality. You cannot say, I'll go do penance. You cannot leave your mother and go. You need to be a shudra there. You need to be a vaishya in certain places. You need to be a kshatriya and a brahmana. You do the combinations of this in present day Kali Yuga. So no one is a brahmana by birth. No one is a kshatriya by birth. This whole by birth situation is a corrupt thing followed to make others feel bad about themselves. That's not to be practiced. That's not the right way to practice. Sadly, there was something like that, but we don't have to subscribe to that kind of a thing. We shouldn't be. Wherever there is, we have to understand that as we don't want to be put down on, we shouldn't be putting down anybody else. So once that's walking the spiritual path prerequisite. You cannot be subscribing to that kind of a thing where by birth or by color or by appearance or anything external, you start putting labels on people and putting them in certain boxes and acting with them a certain way. That will not get you any closer. So while my guru said, he always used to say there used to be fluidity in this varna and ashrama dharma those days. Even though they took God's creation of guna and karma and applied it to run the society, there were no hard and fast rules. King Janaka was Kshatriya, but he operated from a Brahmana place mostly. He's called the Raja Rishi. Vidura was a part Rishi's source and part Shudra. He was born a Dasiputra. He was in the kingdom performing the most important task of keeping justice intact. And Karna again, Mula Bharata says, please go to Vyasa's Mula Bharata. Karna was actually admitted into Drona's school in the preliminary stages of his life, where he got preliminary education from Drona school. But he was not given advanced combat techniques and all that because he was a civilian, not uh, because of his birth or because of what caste he came from. Although you'll find all movies and serials showing everything contrary to that, Mula Bharata always says that he wasn't discriminated by, like, there were no records of that. He had an unlucky set of circumstances around him where he was a Kshatriya and he couldn't exhibit his Kshatriyaness because of the situation where he was in. The way he went about looking for recognition, there were problems with that, and that's why things tumbled down the way they did with Karna's life. But this is not about Karna or anybody, but in ancient civilizations, there used to be fluidity in this Varna. And in my guru used to cite many other examples, not just from Mahabharata and Ramayana. So there were species like a Gatotkacha and Hidimba, for example. There's species of Rakshasa, even lower than these four lines. These four lines of Varna were only for human beings. Human beings are considered superior to Rakshasas. Rakshasas were looked down upon. But Hidimba's actions were sattvic, and so was Gatotkacha, who fought in the right side of the war. So there was fluidity in that. They was used to be married human beings married to Rakshasas, and there used to be all sorts of combinations of things that happened. Satyavati was a fisherwoman, but she got married into a Kshatriya family, and you will find examples of these. And if we were to think that things were so not fluid with Varna at that point, then these unions would not have been present at all. If we were to take all mythology that way, because in many people believe many things, and I feel that Ramayana and Mahabharata are actual things that happen that are still in vogue for us to take lessons from. Those stories are still around for us to take lessons from. So many people think they're just stories. I feel they're happenings from which we learn. So he used to say there was so much fluidity in Varna and Ashrama Dharma those days that they did not use that in a very discriminatory manner. Most of them did not. You'll always find somebody that did. So Hiranyakashipu wanted no temples to be around. None of the people should be saying anything about Narayana. These are all again discriminatory practices. He wanted only asuras to live, the rest of them to suffer and die. This is another discrimination. So all said and done, every society at every point of time would have somebody who thinks this way, that they are superior than the other and they alone have the rights to everything from God. So that's inevitable. Whether you are one of them is the question. You do not subscribe to that idea. That's why these things are there. So this present day Varnashrama is not to be taken into account, because in Kali Yuga, there is no Brahmana, there is no Kshatriya, there is no, our occasions have changed. In Kali Yuga, the only place where we should be placing ourselves is that of a Shudra, where I would say that we all lack spiritual knowledge. We all need that to treat others better, to treat world around us better, to treat other paths better, to treat other religion, people of other religion, people of other color, caste, creed, orientation, everything, to increase compassion and to get closer to God should only be our sole purpose in Kali Yuga. That being said, the point of this verse is not about what he has created, which is Varna Ashrama, Totally not based on birth, but on guna and karma as a guideline for you to see how predominantly you are sattvic, how predominantly you are rajasic and tamasic, what your combinations are, what kind of karmas are you accumulating in this life. This is an indicator for you. So instead of looking at that four varnas as linear and Brahmana being the highest, Shudra being the last, you should look at them as lateral, all four of them equally, and see which action results in spiritual advancement. Action of a Shudra in terms of serving another takes you further to Lord. This negative connotation of that fourth word only came only because practices happened that became very ugly. Started to say everybody else, the first class started to say everybody else is below me. Absolutely not. So in Purusha Sukta, those four are mentioned as one as the face of the Lord and one as the shoulders of the Lord. The other third one being the thighs of the Lord and the feet of the Lord. How can feet be lesser than the face? If you only catch the feet, you can even imagine getting any spiritual advancement. Feet is the first point of entry. In fact, last one too. Sharanagati is done not in face but in the feet of the Lord. You don't go hug God's face and say, I'm surrendered to you. You fall on his feet and say, you're surrendered. So, these were not meant this way. And the deviated minds of human beings have twisted it this way and started practicing bad stuff. But we don't have to be a part of that. We don't want to perpetuate and keep contributing to this. Currently, things have changed from what they were. And at this point of time, we should not hold on to these and start giving strength to bad practices. Rather, know that Varna is based on Guna and Karma, and these are indicators to see how I have led my life. Have I been a Rajasic Kshatriya when it comes to serving my mother, my ill mother, and somebody that needs my service? That is not spiritual advancement. I have to be Shudra there. Did I just walk away from somebody being oppressed? I saw some woman being abused. She's being beaten by somebody. I'm being sattvic. I say, okay, you know what? I'll go home and pray for this woman. Not good. That is not spiritual advancement. That's what Bhishma was being accused for by Lord. Saying, you didn't speak up when you had to. When Draupadi was being treated that way, you made your own thing that I am bound by this dharma. I have taken all these vows. That's a bad action there. Even though you were trying to do a good action, that resulted in not being spiritual. Where you have to speak up and protect the right of another in a lawful manner, you have to. That is the right and appropriate thing to do there, to be Rajasic and Kshatriya there. So you will not take violence in your own hands, saying that you're Kshatriya, you start to beat people. That is against spiritual advancement. So imagine there is a yaga or yajna going on, or a meditation group is meditating for the welfare of the world. That's a very Brahmanic thing to do. You're sitting there and you have to do Brahmanic activity there. Instead, you see somebody opening their eyes during meditation, drinking water, you get mad about it. You're saying, this is for the welfare of society. How dare you drink water? How dare you open your eyes? That is Shadrik. That's not required there. That kind of, you have to guide yourself using these. And you want to do the appropriate thing at the appropriate place. That is going to take you further to spiritual advancement. Here Arjuna is being asked to fight. He needs tamas and rajas instead of sattvic, because that's what's going to reduce his karma, bad karma. So whatever karma's load he has got, and take him steps further to Lord. That's what is required here. This is why Varna and Guna are being spoken about here, for us to be a guide for our own actions. and what those actions create. If you are predominantly tamasic in all your interactions, tamas is needed for certain interactions, but if you're all the time tamasic in your interactions, you'll be building more and more karma that you have to dissolve. So you have to come back in another janma. Because of the karma you accumulated, you'll be put in bad circumstances with all sorts of bad things happening to you. Then you will feel, what the hell, I'm unable to come out of this. So this is why God has created this, is my guru's saying. And the point of this verse is not what he created as an inner guideline, but to say Vidya Kartaram Avyayam. He is the changeless factor behind that. Even though he created this, he is not bound by that, which means he is not going to favor you. If you gave you 80% of sattva and then you have only 20% of tamas, is he going to favor you? No. He is that changeless, lovable aspect behind everything. He is going to love everybody no matter what. The story of Kallalagar, I have to quote here, which my guru was fond of quoting. There were a group of bandits whose vocation was to loot people. These people were devotees of Krishna, extreme devotees of Krishna. They would just offer him things that they had. They whatever they looted, they offered. And I know I'm not asking you to do that same thing. You should take the essence of the story is that the Lord stopped by for them, to please them, even though their life circumstances externally was that their inner heart and the devotion was recognized. That's what God is about. God is about love. I won't say do all bad actions and still love them. Love him. It's not possible. It's about each individual soul and their journey. God decides that way. But I'm saying that that love and devotion will purify everything else and start giving you good janmas, and then ultimately speed up your process. So, Vidya Akartaram Avyayam is the point of this verse. Know him as somebody who's created Varna and Ashrama based on Guna and Karma, not by birth, based on characteristics and the characteristics consequent karma. The karma or actions that result from the characteristics. That's what this Varna is based on. And it is an indicator in Kali Yuga where you operate from each type of situation, each type of transaction that you have with the world. If predominant of your action is for the welfare of the society and welfare of another, and generally you're a loving and approachable person with no hatred in your mind or feelings of inferiority, that's also hatred. If you think you're inferior and others are just walking all over you and they're superior, and then you hate them because of their superiority, that again is discriminatory. You have every right to stand up for yourself. At the same time, if you consider yourself as a spiritual person, you always walk the path of love. So that's what my guru's message was on this. I'm going to read the verse again, if I had not. I've spoken for so long. चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्मविभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्या कर्तारमव्ययम्. The fourfold Varna system was created by me based on the differentiation of guna and karma. Though I am the author thereof, know me to be the non-doer and changeless. I have created this, but I am above this, which means I created this as a guidance to you. You can make or break your life looking at what gunas you operate from and what karmas are resulting from them, is the point of this verse. Instead, this was misinterpreted. The practices were ugly, very discriminatory. They are still performed. The caste system is still very predominant. But if you are walking the path of God, you will not subscribe to that. Many saints, you take Ramana Maharishi, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Ramana Maharishi was practically served by everybody that everybody that wanted to serve him. Paramahamsa took his first arm from the person that was working in his house after his Upanayanam, which is a ceremony of the sacred thread that the Brahmins have. And any say you take Tukaram or Eknath Maharaj or Kabir, these people always have been above and beyond all these definitions of definitions that human beings have created and run. They don't perform they don't operate in those four streams. They're always outside of it. God is outside of it, and we also need to be outside of it. And these practices should be definitely condemned the way they are practiced now. They should not be supported or encouraged. However, we need to first of all make sure in our heart there is no ego, there is no feelings of either inferiority or superiority which festers hatred. We have to do what is called chitta shuddhi. We want to know where we are operating from. This is all about inner world rather than external. So these are indicators to clean yourself up. That's just how it was given by my guru, and that's how it's to be taken according to my guru. And I've always just placed only that much emphasis on these sentences. And I've constantly seen people come with a cynical approach with these and say, look, your Lord has discriminated people. Your Lord has supported this. And then I have to take every religion and mythology as example. Everywhere this has happened. Everywhere somebody is oppressing somebody else. Somebody thinks themselves better than anybody else. So this is happening in every religion, every walk of life, because human minds are perverted that way. Instead of addressing the perversion, if you were to misinterpret religion and just walk away from them, that's only because you're not meant to get any benefit from this. If you throw away Bible because there's one verse that does not resonate with you, throw away Quran or any sacred book that people hold on to, these were all created in because they're there. It's God's acceptance that they should be there. If God allows, those things will remain. If God doesn't allow, those things won't be there. So they are there, they're approved paths to God. So if there are things that are like this, where you wonder whether God has said this or a human being has interpreted this way, you probably are right. Because human beings have done worse things to inflict pain upon others. God is above that. He would not want anything to be like that. So I'm turning the comments off for this video only because people start to take, as I said, they come with cynical approach. Then they say, why is there suffering? Why is God making you suffering? There's law of karma. There is a journey that the soul takes. It takes so much pain before it realizes all this is temporary, and then God alone is permanent, and starts to walk that way. Certain souls, are placed in a very painful situation for many, many reasons. It is between each soul and how that soul progresses towards self-realization, and all souls are progressing towards self-realization in different ways. So if our intention is to be very cynical about the design and somehow find faults with it, we die with that same belief system that everything is against us and doesn't serve the soul any purpose. So I'm taking words from the book Conversations with God and saying, if you are headed towards San Francisco and you take the road towards Seattle, it's not going to take you to San Francisco. That's the same. If you want to be spiritual and walk the path of God, and then you are cynical and you want to find faults with everything that God has allowed to be, then you're not walking towards God. That's my answer to if people are cynical about these things. So this verse needs to be more emphasized on akartaram avyayam, more than concentrating on the varnashrama, how God let unfair things to happen. God did not lead that to be like that. Unfair things happened because human beings started practicing unfairly. So every word that I've said here comes from Guru, and it's not about my own, because I was cynical when I asked this question. I didn't want to find answers, I wanted to find fault. That's where I was before my Guru's guidance. Once he guided me, and elsewhere in Gita there is a mention about the word inferior. The word inferior is being used when referring to women and animals. I questioned that, and the choice of word is bad in the interpretation. It is to be invaluable. Whatever needs to be protected is invaluable. God wanted women to be protected because they're invaluable. The whole story of Rama and Mahabharata, everything is about how a woman was treated and how that is not to be accepted. Bad treatment towards women was not tolerated. So that's the crux of both the epics. So we cannot say, we cannot have that and think that God called us inferior. So it's not possible. So my guru has said these things, and about this verse, I hope I answered your question, Nomad. You can find more if you have access to any, any monk or any teacher. You can find out more, but this is what my guru gave me, and I presented it to you guys. Hope this benefited you, and I will soon meet you with another deep dive. Radhe Radhe.